Welcome to our mini course. I'm Mr. Basil, and even more importantly, welcome to the Basil home. When Mr. O'Brien and I were talking about maybe what we'd like to do on the first day, he thought maybe what would be appropriate and kind of a nice way to kick things off would be a little reflection like adoration. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, I think for me, getting back to Mass, being in the physical Mass, has been, I think, a real important part of my life. And for those few months that we were away, it has certainly been something that we've missed. And I know that no matter who I teach, I know there are always people that are in church every single week. I know there are people that go once in a while. I know there are people that always say, well, I'm going to try to get there, but maybe never do. And without judgment, I just want maybe to talk today, maybe just a few minutes, about the importance of the Mass and the importance of the Eucharist. For me, growing up, and maybe this is your family, on Sunday morning, I might have my father standing over me saying, come on, let's go. As I got older, and when I was 21, I owned my own business. I owned a deli. And one of the most impressive things for me, that on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning, he would just show up unannounced and say to me, I'm here so you can go to church. That's how important it was for him. And I kind of have always fallen into this habit that it's become the centerpiece of my week. Mass can't happen unless you plan for it. The weekends are the busiest time. We are busier than ever. So it really becomes very hard to think about, like all of a sudden on Saturday night, oh, I'm just going to go on a whim. That's very rare. I know it's rare for me, and I'm sure it's rare for you as well. The main reason that we go to Mass is for the Eucharist. Pope John Paul II reminded us that the Eucharist is a way to have heaven on earth. When the priest holds up that host and holds up the precious blood, what's happening there is that heaven and earth encounter each other. Heaven comes down to earth. And we really don't ever want to bypass this encounter when God is calling us and He wants us to be part of Him. And that's really why we go to church. That's really to really walk with Christ on the road to Calvary, to get there every week with Him, to commemorate, to remember, and to celebrate. That's really the most important part of our faith. It's why we celebrate. It's who we are as Christians. We cannot be Christians unless we encounter Christ all the time. When I go to church, I think about these things that have happened in the history of our church, these Eucharistic miracles. Maybe you've talked about them in Scripture, maybe you've talked about them before. I think they've really become something that's important when it comes to realizing that Christ is alive and waiting to meet us all of the time. So I think one of the things that we want to do today, maybe talk a little bit about one of my favorite miracles, was the one in Buenos Aires. There was a priest called Father Alejandro Pizzet, and he had celebrated Mass, and this was in a parish called St. Mary's in Buenos Aires. And as he had finished celebrating Mass, a parishioner came up to him and told him about a discarded Eucharist that he had found on the floor. Now, under normal circumstances, a priest or a Eucharistic minister, anything that has fallen on the floor, would immediately be consumed. In this case, we have, it was, I guess, kind of encrusted in dust. Father Alejandro did not know how long it had been there. So he asked the woman who was working with him at the time to take the host and to put it into the tabernacle in a glass of water. And that's what she did, and she put it, and they locked up the tabernacle, and they went on their way. And it was about 3 days later that when Father Alejandro had opened the tabernacle, he noticed that the Eucharist, the host, started to change to a fleshy substance. Now, immediately alarmed, he did not know what to do. And if you're not really familiar with this, when things happen in the supernatural when it comes to the church, especially at Lourdes, France, where, thousands and thousands of miracles have been reported, but maybe only 60 or 70 have been verified. The church doesn't just put a stamp of approval on these things. So knowing that, Father Alejandro took the cup with the Eucharist and he brought it to the rectory tabernacle where he can keep an eye on it, where he was really concerned with human intervention, where he knew that if I can lock this away, I'm the only one that will have access to this. That really what I want to do is to make sure that no one's tampering with this. So he let it go, and in about another week or so, he checked on it. And instead of just a small portion of the host being changed, now what had happened is that the entire host looked like a fleshy substance, a bloody fleshy substance. So coincidentally, his main superior was Archbishop Jorge Bergoglio, who we know today as Pope Francis. As time went on, he reported what was going on in the parish to Archbishop Bergoglio. And Bergoglio said, well, at one point we'll get a photographer to take pictures of this. If you ever get a chance to look at this online, the reaction of the photographer to taking these pictures is pretty overwhelming, just to be part of this whole process. So time goes on. It's really not till about 3 years later that Bergoglio, Archbishop Bergoglio, allows a special investigator now to take a look at this and just to take the sample and to bring it to some laboratories to be examined. So one of the main laboratories, they went between New York and I believe California, Los Angeles, and they brought one of the sample to Frederick Zugibe, and he was a forensic pathologist, and he was really known for determining several things. He could look at a piece of flesh, be able to tell where it came from in the body. He was a heart specialist, so he would be able to identify if it was the heart and what part of the heart. And he could also determine what happened to the person as they died. And that was a really amazing thing. So when they brought the sample to Zugibe, he did not know that it was a transformed host. He did not know what had happened with this prior to them bringing it to them. So he determined a couple of things. One, that it was from a human. Secondly, it came from the left ventricle of the heart. Thirdly, the person went through a substantial beating as they died. And the fourth thing, where he found all of these white blood cells on it, and here was the most amazing thing, that the white blood cells were still alive. Normally, white blood cells are going to die within an hour, maybe even within 10 minutes of a person dying, and if you took them out of the body, you really wouldn't have any live cells at this point. When they told Frederick Zugibe, Dr. Zugibe, exactly where this came from, he was truly amazed. The whole process makes me think, and I hope it makes you think, about what are we receiving when we go to the sacred Mass? What are we doing when we walk through those doors and we go on our knees and we pray to God and say, come to me. I've got this going on in my life. I've got this going on. I need some strength. I really need some help in getting through this. These days have been hard. They've been hard on so many different people. We're isolated, but yet together. And it's a very, very difficult thing. It's thrown us out of our routines. So this chance to go back to the Mass, maybe your parish is celebrating Mass like my parish. We have a Mass every weekend that's outdoors. My family enjoys that. Maybe you want to get back indoors. It really gives us some time to think about, how do I encounter heaven on earth? We encounter heaven on earth, and we're going to be talking about this as we go through our mini course, in time with friends, in celebrating a meal with family, partying, just having a good time. John Paul II use this term called the sacramental imagination, like so many people in our faith do, that we encounter God through the tangible. And where better to encounter God in the tangible than in the Eucharist? We are called to celebrate, to remember. And that's really what this is about. I'll give you a few minutes just to maybe contemplate where you are in your faith. I'm going to play some music in about a minute or so, and just a couple of different images of the Eucharist as we celebrate at Kellenberg, and just to think about where we are in our faith. When I am inspired by saints, one of the most incredible saints was Padre Pio. And what I like about Padre Pio, he was this simple little Italian man that was in the southeast corner of Italy. And much like my own father, he was a man that saw this simplicity of life as an opportunity to get closer to God. One of the things about Padre Pio that I really admire is that he understood that God can be found every single day. And that's what we want to try to do in all that we do, especially in our relationships. And one of the things that he is known for is his prayer after communion. And I thought I'd share a little bit. It's a pretty long prayer, but just to, even if after you've received the Eucharist, to use his phrase, which is, "Stay with me, Lord. Stay with me, Lord, for it is necessary to have you present, so that I do not forget you. You know how I easily abandon you. Stay with me, Lord, for I am weak, and I need your strength, so that I may not fall so often. Stay with me, Lord, for you are my life, and without you, I am without fervor. Stay with me, Lord, for you are my light, and without you, I am in darkness. Stay with me, Lord, to show me your will. Stay with me, Lord, so that I hear your voice and follow you. Stay with me, Lord, for I desire to love you very much and always be in your company." Maybe if we just, after we receive communion, just to say, "Stay with me, Lord, because I've received you and I don't want to let you go." So as we have a little musical meditation, let's think about how we can better stay with God as He stays with us.
Stay with me, Lord, for I am weak. Be near me, Lord. Help me speak your words of love. They make me whole.